Ladies and gentlemen, again, my name is John Paris. I'm the chairman of the Asian American Group's Endorsement Committee, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us this afternoon while dovetailing into this evening. As I indicated, we are a little bit behind schedule, and I appreciate your patience in waiting for us.
Thank you for rescheduling.
No,
For accommodating us. We appreciate that.
So, if we could, I guess we'll start with Kerry and then go across the dais. If you could please introduce yourself, indicate which race you're running for, and tell us briefly why you are running for this particular race at this particular time.
All right, my name is Judge Kerry Earley. I am running for this race because I want to keep my job.
Okay, there we go.
It is my job.
There we go.
I am the judge, sitting judge in Department 4. I was appointed by Governor Sandoval. I went through the Nevada Judicial Selection Committee in April and May of 2012. Kathy Hardcastle was in Department 4 and she retired. So I actually was chosen among the top 3 and then met with Governor Sandoval and got the appointment. Started the first about middle of July 2012, and as you all probably know, I was here in November of 2012. I had that short time frame and had actually 7 opponents in that race, and I won't go through it, but it was just kind of an anomaly at the time. So I have been on the bench since then. I loved my job when I was in front of you in November of 2012, and I love it even more now. I've worked very hard at Department 4. It's an all-civil division, which I don't know if you remember is my background. I did 32 years of civil law trial work. I've done hundreds of trials in the 8th Judicial District Court. So for me, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to come back and be in a courtroom as a judge and give back where I made a fantastic profession for many, many years, defending doctors and hospitals and also doing plaintiff's work. So I feel even more passionate about my job because I've worked very hard since I've been on the bench. Besides going to the Nevada Judicial College for 2 weeks, I have done many, many trials. I actually did a big Actos trial where I did survive, and you know, I told people 6 months was about 6 years experience. I don't think there's an evidentiary objection that I didn't hear or at least heard 5 times. So I even feel more happy to serve where I am because being a judge is different from being an attorney. I mean, it's a learning curve like anything else. You know, even though you think you've been an attorney that long, it's a little different when you're on the bench. So I truly feel I've worked very hard and I feel like I've done a great job handling civil cases. I actually have done civil conflict. So I'm here seeking to keep my job. And I truly feel that I have earned 6 more years. I've worked very hard to make Department 4 a equitable, fair, and I will tell you a story. I did a calendar on Thursday, and I had a long calendar. I know it's long.
And I'm sorry, I'll need to cut you off before we get into that story, just to keep things balanced.
I just had one attorney stay at the end and came up to me and said, Judge, I usually am in federal court, but it was great to have a Nevada District Court judge like you. And I thought, because usually you hear the other.
Yeah.
So it looks like you ruled against me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. William.
My name is William Horne. I'm running for District Court Department 5. The reason why I'm running is because, first off, many of my colleagues in the community, attorneys, started soliciting me to run during the last legislative session. As many of you know, I've been serving in the legislature for the last 12 years. In the last session, I was majority leader. During that session, that's when I started getting the phone calls and actually visits to Carson City asking me to consider running. I chose to run this seat because, number one, it does both criminal and civil matters, Department 5, and that's where my experience has been, mostly in the criminal arena, but I've also done commercial litigation, like construction litigation, and I've done workers' comp defense, and even some personal injury. So I have a variety of experience that this court also does. I grew up here in this community. My family moved here 45 years ago. When I was 7 years old, my father was in the Air Force. And I've been a member of this community ever since, and I've been giving back to this community. And spending the time both practicing law and crafting laws in Carson City to protect our community, I think is a nice combination to bring to the bench in doing that. Practicing attorneys will all tell you, oftentimes citing legislative intent. Well, part of legislative intent is also your community awareness. Why did that happen? Well, because you have your pulse on the community and what's involved, why that law became a law in the first place. And I bring that to the bench. Lastly, I also bring to the bench a certain demeanor. What I've been told over and over again was not just my legal training, but also how I conduct myself in court and in the legislature, as being a chairman of the Judiciary Committee, chairman of Corrections, Parole, and Probation, and the majority leader in the Assembly. I've handled many complex issues against feuding parties, both coming forward to the legislature, asking for diverse things, and managing that, and getting the praise of all of my colleagues. From the time that I was there, my freshman session being named the outstanding freshman, to my last session being named the outstanding legislator, and this is by both Republicans and Democrats. And I believe that's something that a judge does as well. A judge sits before litigants. Both sides are passionate about their particular positions they're bringing to the court, and that judge has to preside over that and create an atmosphere to where all litigants believe that they are before a fair and impartial judge, and that they've left that court, whether they won or lost, that they've been heard by someone who was fair and impartial, did not have an axe to grind.
Well, just so you know, William, I should have mentioned this before we even really began with Kerry. I have no case, just for you, and for your edification, Steve, I have no case in Department 4. I've never even seen you on the bench.
You've only seen me outside the Phoenix building for
I
some
take
reason. We seem to run it.
I take it at your word that you actually are a judge, quite candidly. William, regarding Department 5, I do have one criminal case in front of Department 5. It's set for a trial sometime in March. Because of that fact, and I spoke with Carolyn when she was here interviewing a few weeks ago. Because of that, I'll moderate the actual interview, but I'm not going to take part in the actual endorsement process to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Regarding Nicholas, regarding Department 20, I have no pending cases in front of Judge Tao. I have maybe one or two people who are currently on probation, and they would, if they get revoked in the next literally week and a half, it could implicate me.
I don't care if you sit on it or not, and you even join in. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but other than that,
don't worry about it.
I have nothing in Department 20.
Don't worry about it. Don't recuse yourself.
So,
you can do
trust me, I want less work. I'm looking to get out of this as best as I can. But
I want you to stay in.
But Nicholas, why did you decide to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Well, I'm Nicholas Perrino, and I'm running for Department 20, as was just pointed out. I have 45 years of experience, you'll see there, and I was on the bench in Cincinnati, Ohio, Common Pleas Court. I was fortunate enough to be appointed by the governor there. I loved it, and I got the highest rating that you could get there, highly recommended. I've had 45 years I was a assistant prosecutor, I was a magistrate in domestic relations, I was on the bench, and 33 years of private practice, mostly criminal defense. I've defended a death penalty case, and I've also heard a death penalty case while on the bench. Now, I've been, like I say, 45 years. I just received this notice from Martindale Hubble. Nicholas A. Perrino, rated AV preeminent for 20 years. Highest possible peer review rating in legal ability and ethical standards. I've never had a complaint lodged against me in my 45 years of practice. I love the practice. I've got the background on both sides, which I think you need, on the defense, prosecutor, and a sitting judge. Why this handles both civil and criminal. Why 20? I don't know. I was looking, and there's so many I'm running. I could have just as well been in one of the others, but I narrowed it down to this one. And if it were back again, it might be a different one that I would choose. But I like it that it's criminal and civil. Thank you.
Okay. Steve.
Thank you. I'm Steve Smith. I'm the challenger to the incumbent in Department 4. We have an elective system by which we elect judges. It's in the Constitution, the state Constitution. This is a very important decision that the voters are going to be making. I'm running because, quite frankly, I want to be a judge. What do I bring to the table? I bring to the table that I have both a civil and criminal background. I've been an attorney for 35 years. I feel like a youngster standing next to Mr. Perrino, who's taught me there with 45. But, you know, having said that, I've served as a short-term trial judge in the district court for 7 years. I've been an arbitrator for over 17 years. I've been both a former federal and state prosecutor for over 13 years. I was the legal counsel for the health district, and I defended patients' rights all the way up to the Nevada Supreme Court. During my term at the health district, the Nevada Clean Indoor Air Act was upheld as constitutional, which now gives constituents and individuals the choice of whether they want to be in a smoking versus a non-smoking environment. I've been an author, an educator in CLE. I recently wrote an article. I was having a little discussion with Justin Jones, the February issue in the Nevada Lawyer, which was one of the most popular issues ever in print. They've run out of them. I have a link to my article. Guns and the Second Amendment is an issue that I feel very passionate about, and I'm so pleased that we have the right to defend ourselves in Nevada. I mean, as a judge, you don't get to make law, but certainly I got an opportunity as an attorney to write about it. So I feel I'm going to be balanced to that department. I'm going to bring my alternative dispute resolution skills to move cases along. I'm also running because in the last election in 2012, and Judge Earley was the winner, but she only won by under 20% of the vote. If you look
But
at
there were 8 people in that election.
I'm sorry, you got to speak. Please let me
that.
speak.
I want them to understand.
Okay, yeah, there were 8 people, but the top 3 outpolled are 2.5 to 1. So I'm saying I think the voters should be given a choice. That is our elective system. Many incumbent judges don't like having opponents. They think that, well, I'm an incumbent judge, I have the expectancy that I should be, not have opposition. But that's our elective system. Let the voters decide. That's why I'm here.
Well, it would be difficult to convince Nevada voters to give up their opportunity under a Missouri plan or something along those lines.
Voted against that.
They did.
But people are pushing it. People are pushing it. And there are several members of the judiciary that are currently pushing it.
Well, Steve, one thing that we're asking many individuals in the judicial races centers around the much vaunted RJ poll that comes out biennially. We can talk about the merits of the poll or how accurate it is, but what ideas do you have to make that poll a little bit better of a tool for lack of a better term, civilians to use to understand how to rate the judges in relation to one another? Since that's really all that we have at this point in time from a public's standpoint.
Well, let me tell you that I was with the Clark County Bar Association in the early 2000s. I was on the board when, unfortunately, several of the judges got upset with the poll results and the way they were confronted by the then reporters from the RJ. So the Bar Association, the Clark County Bar Association, was a co-sponsor of the survey of the judges. This is the first jurisdiction, I've practiced in 4, that has had such a survey. I think it's terrific that the attorneys get an opportunity to rate the judges and to get an idea of where the judges stand. I'd like to see the Bar Association get more involved with it. I think you remember that it was involved. I think it gave it more credibility. I did mention it to the RJ when I had my interview with them, and I don't think that the current editorial staff, they don't go back to that time, I don't think that they were aware of it. I think that would give it more credibility. I think there's other means by which they could do it. They could actually contact lawyers and do more of a kind of a random sampling like that. Have you appeared in front of this judge? What do you think? Would you be so kind as to fill out the survey or whatever, so we get more participation? I think, candidly, there are many lawyers that don't fill out the survey because they don't believe it's anonymous, and I thought that the Bar Association being involved in it gave it a little more credibility. It's not easy for attorneys to criticize judges or to, submit anonymous remarks, but yet there are others that relish at that opportunity and are a little bit mean about it, and of course I think it's a little unfair sometimes, because let's face it, judges have to make hard decisions. That's what we pay them to do. And so the survey sometimes could cause judges to defer decisions, kind of, hope that the parties work the case out so that they don't have to make those hard decisions. I think that's been a criticism of judges in Nevada generally, is that often they don't like to make those hard decisions because it comes back to bite them maybe in that survey.
Nicholas.
Yeah, this is from Cincinnati. In Cincinnati, the Bar Association did it all, and that was, I felt, was fair. The RJ has their own agenda, and I don't put much into it. That's all. I just think the Bar Association should be doing it, and I think it would be then a reliable one, and I think more attorneys would participate.
Okay. William.
Same question?
Please.
Yeah, the one thing that I appreciate the effort on attempting to rate the judges. Which attorneys among us haven't gotten multiple inquiries from friends and family on who we should vote for? It's I don't particularly like some of the more personal things that are in it doesn't I don't think give substantive input into it and do that. But I will say that we're the ones who are before the judges. I think there is definitely something that you can see in the numbers. Those of us, I would also like to see, there are those judges that you may never have appeared before, and you, as you recall, on the survey, you don't rate judges you never appeared before. But I think if you've been in the profession long enough, your peers, even someone in your own office, whatever, may have been before them, and you've heard things. And I think there should be one little section on what's your opinion. What do you hear is the ranking of that particular judge? How do you think they are perceived in the legal community? I think that's a fair question to do that. So that would be a fair question to add to such a survey. Maybe a third party producing the questions, so it's not slanted, but more scientific.
Okay. Kerry.
I think it's a great thing. My concern with it, and I think, is that we need more participation. I had less than 100 people, and when I talk to some of my friends, did you fill it out? They go, no, we know you're a good judge. Why would we do that? So I think, and I'm like, okay. So I think it's a great, I will tell you, I read comments that I took to heart if I thought it helped me. You can't have a thin skin and be a judge. You can't have a thin skin and be a litigator. As I had one attorney, rolling her eyes at me. I go, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I've done litigation for 30 years. You can call me. I've been called it, but I've been there. I've done that. I just want a greater participation, and I think people are concerned, and Mr. Smith said that, is it really anonymous? There is that concern within the community, because you use your bar number and it's done electronically. So I would like to, if the bar was involved initially, I know I always filled it out, but I would really like to see it be combined with a better, other than just the RJ. Because I do think it's very helpful, and I do think it's very useful. I think it's something that the judges should welcome. I mean, because it is hard. No one will, like I said, it was so nice to have somebody actually court to say, Judge, it's great to be here, what you usually get, because we make hard decisions. I learned very early doing this that, at the end of the day, 50% think you're wrong and 50% think you didn't give them enough. So think about that as a judge. All you can do is know you were prepared, you looked at the law, you did the very best you could. And now I've found if you give more and more analysis when you make decisions, the good old days when I started, someone would say denied and you'd go, what did I do wrong? No, how did I lose this? Now the Supreme Court is very good about that, coming back saying, hey, we can't even review your opinions, your rulings, unless you give us an analysis, give us the basis. So I think that has helped too with attorneys understanding a little more. So I would just like I would like a better PR for it. A little more credibility other than the RJ. Does that make sense? Because people have gotten the view, why bother? And I am very serious. I asked 20 of my friends, and they said, why would we, they did not fill it out. And I said, then that makes things skewed. That's not fair either, and it is a tendency when people are mad. As Mr. Horne mentioned about the comments, some of the comments, I didn't get any, but I saw some friends. Whoa,
Yeah.
they were
it's
pretty cruel.
And I think it's good to hear the judge say that, constructive criticism is welcome.
Yes.
Really, how often is it that a judge will receive constructive criticism the time they're on the bench, outside of an opinion coming out from the Supreme Court or something, so it's probably a good thing.
Which
if you
may or may
get
not be constructive.
Which may or may not be constructive.
We'll
Isn't
leave it.
that the truth, Mr. Kerry? May or may not. But I think it's a great deal. I hope we keep it, and I hope we make it a better vehicle, to be honest.
Nicholas, we'll start with the next question with you and go across. You have a significant amount of experience in numerous different jurisdictions. Here in Nevada, obviously, we have a great deal of specialty courts. Now, all of the departments you're going for, well, none of the departments for which we have races today are dedicated civil divisions from a statutory standpoint,
Right.
at least. Assuming you're elected, what specialty courts would you like to either try and take a turn and try and assist these individuals in getting through their particular issues, such as Veterans Court or Mental Health Court, or B, what different disciplines or unaddressed needs do you think are out there that would benefit from such a specialty court?
I think the specialty courts are a good step, number one, because rehabilitation, keeping them out of prison, saves a lot of money, and it's a good thing. Usually, when you're sending people to prison, you're almost setting them up for failure in the future. So, if you can rehabilitate someone and make them a constructive citizen again, that's great. Now, the Veterans Court, I think that's a great thing. And the reason they formed that one is because the veterans had such a voice. But I think, and also you're starting to see alcohol, you're starting to see drugs. All those, they can be handled by one court. And the same should apply to them. If you can rehabilitate them and not send them to prison, you should do it. It costs $50,000 to $60,000 to house someone in prison a year. So I'm not saying there aren't people that have to be in prison. There's no question about it. But those specialty courts, I think that's where they're doing the best in aiding the courts in either rehabilitating or setting out and saying this one can't be, he needs different treatment. And that is maybe incarceration. So, because they're not living up to it. But these specialty courts are great. Which one would I like? Any one of them. I mean, I just think it's a great thing having that assistance for the judges.
Okay. Steve.
Well, I have both a civil and criminal background, so I'll be able to sit both at this department. He's going to hear both civil and criminal. When I came to Nevada in the early 90s, I've lived in town now over 20-something years. I remember when you'd have the civil calendar and you'd watch them bring the chain out, and then we would be waiting, invariably waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it just said, well, we're not going to get to the civil calendar today till this afternoon, so why don't you come back in the afternoon? And then you'd come back in the afternoon, and then they'd say, you know what, I just have one matter to take that's left over from the criminal department and the defendants here. So we're going to do that first. And now, you know, all of a sudden it's like 2 o'clock. And I remember when family court was together with general civil jurisdiction. I mean, it was a big step forward. We have come so far. I remember being mystified why we had the 5-year rule. And we had the 5-year rule which says that civil cases have to be heard within 5 years or they could be summarily dismissed, because cases just used to linger and linger and linger, and then they came up with 16.1, which required the attorneys to get together, talk about settlement, do a joint case conference report. Then we got a discovery commissioner to have consistency and to move the discovery along. And I think that, generally speaking, the courts are working better now than they ever have. You know, cases, actually, I'm hearing attorneys complain that cases are going to trial too soon. And what's the first thing they want to do? Of course, lawyers always want to postpone their cases, it seems.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Kerry, specialty courts.
Obviously what we're doing is, Linda Bell's doing specialty court now, and I know Judge Delaney did it before. I think obviously that's a huge step for everybody, and everybody's behind it. What I'd like to see, honestly, and a couple people have approached me, is do a specialty court for medical malpractice and like the pharmaceutical case like I just did Actos, because, you know, you get these, I was trying to think, I think I had over 100 and some motions in limine, John, can you imagine, for the Actos case? I did almost 2 months of motions in limine. Why should another judge get those same ones? I mean, it's very difficult, and we've actually talked about it. Same with the medical malpractice. You know, we do the sweeps now, and now they go all to everybody. But I would like to see if we could get a specialty court in that area. And obviously, I've done over 15 medical malpractice cases because that is what I specialized in, and I enjoyed very much. I think that would be one area to look into. Whether we can get it or not, I don't know. I do know we need help in civil litigation. It still is overwhelming, the workload. I mean, Judge Becker the other day sat with me and said, you just can't do a calendar like this, Judge. You can't have 6 dispositive motions every Tuesday and Thursday. There's no way. But if you try to set it out too far, then the attorneys don't get motions for 60 days, 75 days. So there's a very big need for all civil and to get things moving, you know. So I would kind of like to see something on complex litigation. I know when we did Alan Earl's department, that was kind of the idea, and we've done the business court now. That is one idea that a couple judges have approached me, in fact, Justice Cherry, so I don't know, but I like that one. I do certainly think the specialty courts are something we need, and I'd be glad to rotate in it, although I like the complex civil because that's my background, and other judges, you know, don't want to do that or look to me and said, better you than me. Sure. You know how that works. So I think to say we come forward, I remember starting out where they had the witnesses, remember, you were too young, but first thing in the morning they had your witnesses and did the divorces first thing every department.
I had heard about it.
Oh, no, it's
the glory days.
Marilyn Romanelli would be there, and Hank
Judge
Gordon.
Bonaventure doing divorces must have been a sight to see. So.
Well, they had their little script, and you just sat and listened, but we all went through that. So we've come a long, I agree, we've come a long way. We can still do improvements and work on it.
William, specialty courts.
Yeah, I'm very interested in specialty courts, particularly veterans and mental health court, and there's an overlap there. I appreciate the change that I'm seeing amongst the judiciary in recognizing the importance of it and participating. I still think there's more room to grow in that regard. I think that what is meant is the overall the importance on, just to give you I had a client, my father did 2 tours of Vietnam, came back leukemia, and died just before my 12th birthday. So I have it's a very affinity to veterans and what they go through. And I had a client a criminal client, defendant, who there was no intervention in this man's life. He'd been in and out of the system. He had substance abuse problems, mental health problems, and no one had ever intervened. Somehow or another, throughout the years, he had fallen through the cracks. Everybody was talking about the Gulf War veterans and doing that, which is, you know, they have the same problem, but how are we to Vietnam veterans that need the help with the system and have not been helped. But for their substance abuse, from their PTSD never been addressed, the mental health issues, how many years and time in prison, beds in mental health could have been avoided if there had been some type of intervention. And so I think just like they're doing with law enforcement, they're giving more police officers training on how to identify mental health patients in the field, and finding out the veterans they're coming in contact with, homeless veterans, and what issues they have. I think judges should go through that training as well to be able to identify those litigants in court. And it doesn't mean you're absolving them of crimes they're charged for or anything like that, but it means that we can still intervene and get them that help, because after we're done adjudicating this matter, however it comes out, at least this person, this mental health person, this veteran or whatever, may have the tools and support where they don't come before the court again. And I think that's part of justice that the judge is, in today's world, should be doing. Reducing the number of repeat offenders that are coming before you, if you can do that. And that's what I would like to do as a judge.